G'day reefers, welcome to another episode of Gallery Aquatica TV. My name's Ania and this is the Frag Files. Today we're going to cover Duncanopsammia, so let's get a couple of these colonies going so we can get started. Now, Duncanopsammia is a very iconic Australian coral. It's actually quite unique in that it's a monotypic genus of coral that only contains one species. What we Aussies do realise though, that the Duncans that are collected on the eastern side of Australia have long elongate branches, and the ones on the western side of Australia, they are also branching, but the branches form more of a compact kind of a plate. So just like all fragging, there are numerous reasons why we might want to frag coral. One being to share it around because it's grown too big. The other is to rescue it from a bit of damage. The two colonies we have here are an example of both reasons. So let's cover some of the tools we're going to use today to get this started. And here we are at our tool bench. Today we have put aside some very strong cutters, both crescent and standard coral snips. We have a turkey baster, some soaking frag plugs, a couple of stands on which to place the coral. We're using CG Ecotech coral glue, and as always we're using the coral dip. Today I've chosen iodine because of the nature of the fleshy tissue on the Duncanopsammia and how good this is to heal that tissue. We've got our dip bucket and a bath, a towel and a pair of gloves. So let's prepare the dip. It's just one cap for a couple of liters of water, and we swirl it around until it's kind of a little bit clear. That's how I know that the iodine based dip is ready to use. You can see just a slight tea colour tint there in that bucket. So, I mentioned before, why are we fragging this colony? Because unfortunately it has arrived to us from the collector with a little bit of damage here, and I believe it's causing the whole colony to suffer. Also, on the underside, what we've actually discovered are presence of these invasive little sponges, this black sponge here, and I believe once we cut this into a few different pieces, we'll be able to manage this infection much easier. Put that there, ready to go. With this Duncanopsammia, you can see it's got some vermitids growing on the center, but these single polyp heads have grown in captivity, this is from a tank takedown, into these multiple clusters. And while we do feel there are clientele out there who want to buy a 100 head Duncanopsammia colony, we find it much easier to rehome individual small clusters. So we've been soaking some ceramic frag plugs for a little while now, namely for the function of having the locked up air bubbles within the porcelain released. Sometimes when you don't wait long enough and you put the glue down, you can get these really unsightly bubbles. So we've got a couple of frag plugs here with stems, but I think it'll be best to use these natural rock plugs for Duncan. Just the nature of the way the branches grow out, there's really no need for a small frag plug when you can use these. Don't know how many we're going to have to make, but better to be prepared. So let's start with the overgrown Duncan colony. We can clearly see here there's a number of these clusters which are going to make really attractive little colonies for reefers. So I'm going to use the easy cut snips first to just cut at the base. Oh, yeah, that's way too strong for my standard coral snips. Lucky, so lucky, I have these Seachem crescent cutters, which are probably going to be, yes, absolutely perfect for this job. I couldn't do it without that. Wow. Now, although it's a branching LPS coral, these little clusters were disjointed, which means by feeding these, the nutrition was not possibly going to get to these. So there's yet again another reason why fragging was going to be beneficial for this colony. So we've got 4. Yeah, that's quite nice. Could probably cut this one up again, but yeah, why not? Oh, a cute little one. Yeah, that'll do. Oh my god! I meant that. So we're gonna use our gel formula of CG. I'll make these on the stems, on the plugs with stems. We're gonna make use of these little coral stands today as well. It's just a bit easier to have things propped up when you've got this kind of a shape involved. It's a little bit off the rack. Yeah. Put them down. Some frag plugs come with these really handy divots, which are incredibly useful when you've got a base like this. So we'll use that to our advantage. Now, being a much larger piece than what we usually work with fragging, it may take a little longer for the glue to set. A bit top heavy. The glue will set in presence of water, so be sure to position the colony perfectly before you're ready to pour the water. Sorry for blocking the view there. You can use anything for a prop, really. I like to use something soft so it doesn't irritate the coral tissue, if possible. And we've got these 2 little ones left now. So I'll put them up here on the rack. Oh, very good. So once we're certain that we've put them in the right positioning, going to just use some standard seawater and pour it over the top. Having the rack above a plastic tub is really helpful to catch all the fallen water and the glue. When you simply dunk a frag like this, you're at risk of having the glue come up and irritate the coral tissue, which is not ideal. So having the water fall down is certainly a good trick. 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're done. So while those are setting, let's get on to this second colony. I'm going to first just remove this damaged part. I believe it was stung before we received it, and just clean that up with my standard coral snips. Now, looking at this sponge on the underside, I'm just going to dip my toothbrush in some iodine. And the issue with invasive LPS sponge is that it's truly intertwined in the skeletal matrix. So it's almost taking place of the calcium carbonate and invading the coral from the inside out. So perhaps by cutting it away, we're going to be able to isolate it to be only evident in the dead part, not up in the main part of the colony. You can see here once the polyps are retracted, which it makes it much easier to frag any LPS coral, that the stems on this Duncan are a beautiful, brilliant green colour. And therefore, it goes to sort of mention that those stems are potentially photosynthetic. Although, you know me, I'm really into feeding coral. I have to say, it's important to give Duncanopsammia a good feast, 2 or 3 times a week if you would like that growth, because they are truly an LPS coral which is hungry. So this one seems a bit easier to cut with my standard coral snips, and my theory to this would be that skeleton being already partially kind of eroded for me by this sponge. Commonly we see this invasive sponge in torch coral, Euphilia, and candy cane, Colastria, Blastomusa, these kinds of LPS, and it's orange too in some parts of Australia. So let's see what we're dealing with here. I think we need to make some of these a bit smaller. Sponge responds very well to hydrogen peroxide dipping. Wow, did that just hit the camera? So worst case, we can always use some HP dip down the track. So coming up now to the thicker part of these colonies, I'm going to go back to using the crescent cutters, and we're actually cutting through tissue. Oh man, that's tough. I hope I can do this. Oh, shoot. I'm pretty stubborn when it comes to not using power tools, but undoubtedly that would be a lot easier if I had a bandsaw. I usually say if I can't cut it by hand, I'm not going to cut it. So, okay. That's all very healthy there. Let's see if I can't separate this. Oh, what a dense skeleton. So we're going to have 3 large ones. 1, 2, 3. And 5 small ones. These are single polyp frags. How cute. I'll just clean those up. There are not many LPS corals which we deal with that have a dense skeleton such as this. One of these days we will crack out the power tools, I promise, but It's not today. They're going to be really attractive anyway. The Duncan is starting to slime up. I'm potentially regretting not wearing gloves, just not because it's toxic, but just because it feels undesirable. And just putting the glue down on these rock plugs. I like these because they don't look as artificial as the standard ceramic. Particularly nice for bigger colonies to have that kind of stable base. We'll start from the biggest and go down to the smallest. Got to find an appropriate shape. There we go. One. Okay. I give up. Two. A really cool thing about the Duncan is that they come in quite a diversity of colours, namely different amounts of green, purple, like a teal, kind of a blue throughout. And when those polyps open, they kind of remind me of like miniature Catalophila jardini, or like kind of like cross torch coral jardini. Yeah, and there's no other coral like it, which makes these incredibly appealing, just to have a variation in texture and shape in your home display. You know, SPS keepers like them, soft coral people like them, LPS people like them. So they're a bit of an all-rounder coral that I'm glad we got to cover today. We've set our frags. Just gonna use some water. Ooh. To ensure that glue is nice and set. It looks really stunning when you have different colours of Duncan placed next to each other in a bit of a garden in the aquarium as well. I don't know whether I prefer the Queensland or the WA Duncan. I think I like them both. So we've set our 2 colonies of Duncan frags. Let's remove these props and dip them in the iodine. So as you can see here, fragging this Duncanopsammia has been a great success today. We've got plenty of different colonies to share with other reefers. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of the Frag Files. Hope to see you again soon, and happy reefing!
So that's our video for today. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button, hit the subscribe as well. We'll be putting out videos every week showing a new tank with new products. There's going to be lots in all the videos. I'm Cam the Fish Guy, and keep on reefing.